My name is Nicole Vagel, and I work in the Office of Human Resources to support campus employee well-being. And in the replacement of the Wellness Symposium that we typically have during this time of year, we organize 31 days of community well-being for the month of October. Given everything COVID related and just what's been happening in our world and in our community during 2020, obviously we needed to move things to be virtual, but then we also wanted to recognize not only the self-care and self-wellness and well-being that we want to work on and provide offerings for, but also, what does that look like in our community, and how can we reflect the self-care that we're doing also in our communities to work on healing and growth. And so we hope you've been able to take advantage of some of the pre-recorded talks and resources and thought-provoking questions and some of the small actions that we've included on the interactive calendar on the webpage. And if not, those will be resources available to you to continue to refer back to. And I would just like to extend a big thank you to our OHR conferences team, who has really been instrumental in making this month happen. So just a heartfelt thank you to them for all of their hard work. And then also to our partners in Department of Family Medicine and Community Health, as well as our engagement, inclusion, and diversity partners within the Office of Human Resources for helping us curate the content for this month. So today's session will be recorded. I'm sure you saw that little notification pop up on your screen, and that is so we can provide this session at a later time for folks that weren't able to join today, or if you feel like you want to come back and revisit this session, you will be able to do so on the interactive calendar. So for today's session, I'm very pleased to welcome Wes Luke, who is going to guide us through music listening as a paradigm of mindfulness practices. So Wes, I will hand it over to you, and welcome.
Hello, everybody. My name is Wes Luke, and I've been asked to speak to you today about music and mindfulness. Music and mindfulness are two widely historically disparate fields, but they overlap to a great degree in the kind of consciousness that is cultivated in the respective practices. And I think it's only really in the late 20th and early 21st centuries here that a lot of people have started realizing the degree to which the health benefits that are traditionally associated with the mindfulness practices that came out of East Asia and the cultivation of aesthetic consciousness that has been practiced in the West for the last couple hundred years are really quite similar. I'm gonna talk to you a fair bit about myself. This is gonna be a highly autobiographical talk. And I'm going to offer a fair number of suggestions about the nature of music listening as I do as a professional musician. And hopefully there's something that you can take away from this and apply to your own everyday life. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself just right off the bat. I am I'm a classical violinist. I play the violin professionally. I'm based here in Madison, Wisconsin. I play in the Madison Symphony and in the Wisconsin Chamber Orchestra. So you'll see me basically anytime there's an orchestra concert happening here in Madison in Overture Hall or at concerts on the square. If you ever come to one of those, once they start happening again, please come say hey if you enjoyed this talk. And I really always enjoy meeting new people. I play in a string quartet. I'm the first violinist of the Ancora String Quartet, which does performances all over Wisconsin and recently did a tour of Germany. We also have played frequently on Wisconsin Public Radio, most recently earlier this year, just a few days before the pandemic shutdown. And I'm also the concertmaster of the LaCrosse Symphony Orchestra. Now, the LaCrosse Symphony is a regional orchestra that has, like most orchestras, hires soloists from all over the world. And this particular week is returning to live in-person concerts. And our soloist that we had hired was a wonderful young soloist named Ty Murray, who was based in Berlin at the present moment. And she had been following what's been happening with COVID in Wisconsin from afar, and just on Monday of this week decided that it was a little bit too treacherous for her to come here. So one of the things that a concertmaster does, or one of the roles that a concertmaster can play in an orchestra, is when a violin soloist is not able to play a concerto solo, it often falls to the concertmaster to play that concerto. That happened this week. So this particular week, tomorrow, I am going to be filling in for Ty Murray on the Bach Violin Concerto in E major. This concert will be live streamed. And if you are interested in watching a live stream concert, I'll just throw into the chat here a link to the website that you can click on. And if you're interested, tomorrow night, 7:30, we'll be playing an hour-long concert out of Viterbo University in LaCrosse. I've been thinking a lot about Bach for the last week because of this project that fell into my hands. So my presentation today, I'm going to play some music by Bach for you. And I'm going to go a little bit more into my own personal history, and in order to kind of give you a sense of where I'm coming from with mindfulness in relation to music. I did my undergraduate education at the New England Conservatory in Boston, and I did my graduate study here at UW-Madison, and I've continued living in Madison since then. When I was in Boston, I spent a lot of time at the Shambhala Meditation Center in Brookline, as well as at the Cambridge Zen Center in Cambridge. Here in Wisconsin, I've been involved in performance presentations on music and mindfulness at the Wisconsin Institutes for Discovery, and done multiple performances at the Zen Dojo in Spring Green, Wisconsin. I was born into a musical family. Everyone in my family plays multiple musical instruments and sings regularly. My father and my older brother eventually became medical doctors, but they still maintain music in their own lives. Church music and music theater were sort of the foundation of what we did as a family growing up. Those were my parents' main enthusiasms at that time. And so those were things that we all did. But eventually my siblings ended up more primarily interested in jazz and rock and country and pop. And I ended up doing classical music for a living. And that's what I'm going to be speaking to you about today. When I was growing up, music was everywhere, just all the time. There was really no escaping it. There were always piano lessons and practice sessions and rehearsals audible in the many houses that we lived in, which were a lot because my dad used the U.S. Army to pay for his medical school. So while we were in the Army, we were moved around as a family quite a lot. One of the places we ended up in was living in Germany, in Bavaria, close to the Czech border. And it was while we were in Germany that I started to gain my primary enthusiasm for historical music. My mother, who's a church organist, would drive me around to all these different churches in southern and eastern, the former East Germany, where J.S. Bach would the actual organs that Bach played. I have a lot of built-in visceral, almost physical sorts of memories of some of those sounds and some of the things that I felt during that time in my life. There was so much music, though, when I was a kid, so constantly, that I ended up cultivating a different kind of approach to it. At times, I would sort of tune it out because it was so constant in my life. I didn't really feel like listening to all of my mom's piano lessons. And I ended up doing a fairly good job of going about my daily business and maintaining my own thoughts and kind of tuning out the sounds that were happening around me. And this kind of way of operating when music is going on is the opposite of what I'm going to be talking about here. When we talk about music listening, we're talking about a certain level of intention that we have about putting that at the forefront of our consciousness, as opposed to like just music hearing, which you might hear music while at a coffee shop having a conversation, but you're concentrating on your conversation and you're not concentrating on the music. You might hear music while pumping gas at a gas station, but you're not really thinking about it. You might even be hearing music if you buy tickets to a concert and you're sitting in a concert hall, but you're not really focused on the music, you're focused on your own thoughts. And that kind of cognition, I'm going to just refer to as hearing music, and that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about listening to music. And it's this kind of intentional listening that can be cultivated as a form of mindfulness. Successful listening involves a great deal of intention. And it is only when the conscious mind is entirely filled up with attentiveness to the presence of the musical sound that it could really be called mindful listening. In this kind of cultivated mindful listening, there's nothing in the past or future. There's no concern for the world outside of the sound. The mind is literally entirely full right now of just sound thought and nothing else. Mindful listening of this kind can be enormously cathartic for the kind of life energies that tend to get pent up in the other parts of our day. It can free us from the constant constraints that we often unnecessarily put ourselves in. And it can, if practiced regularly, be transformative in a way very similar to the way that the practice of seated meditation mindfulness can be, and help us become more capacious, fuller versions of ourselves. Now, listening to music mindfully is one of the most important skills a performing musician has to cultivate. It has some techniques to it. And I'm going to be talking about a few of those techniques. Specifically, I'm going to talk about how you situate yourself in the listening experience, the ways that we as musicians listen to the particularities of the elements of musical sound, the relationship of the breath to the music that we are taking in, and the ways that we deal with the emotion that we experience in listening to music. The first thing I'd like to talk about just briefly is the sort of habit or ritual associated with mindful listening. And in a way very similar to the way that if you desire to cultivate mindfulness in the traditional, say, Buddhist tradition, you're going to go and you're going to sit in a room with other people who are sitting. And the reason why you're going to do that mostly is because it's going to make you do it, and because that room is devoted to that purpose. And cultivating this kind of ritual is a lot harder these days because of COVID. My own feeling is that the rituals associated with concert going, theater going experiences that developed over the last couple centuries are actually pretty good. When I go out for an evening, I go get dinner, I maybe have a glass of wine, I find my seat in the concert hall, I enjoy the concert, seated in a comfortable seat that's positioned in order for me to be able to hear the music well. There's a whole process that I go through that now during COVID, I have to kind of do myself and do at home. And so I'm going to strongly encourage you just right off the bat, if you're not practicing a form of almost ritualistic, intentional listening, mindful cultivation at home, try to devote some part of your day or some part of your apartment or house to that purpose. I think during COVID, all of us are really learning a lot about the transformation of our domestic spaces for multiple uses as we have to kind of do everything at home. Here in my apartment in downtown Madison, when I study music, I go through basically the same process that I do when I'm going to watch a movie, for example. I turn off the lights. I have a particular position where I put the chair in the room, and I check in on my body. Like, for example, right now, I'm seated with both feet on the floor. The bottoms of my feet are completely on the floor. My sits bones are connected to the chair, and my back is more or less straight. That's what I would recommend in general you do if you want to cultivate mindful listening. In general, a straight back, feet firmly planted on the floor, shoulder width apart. When we play violin, say in orchestra or in chamber music, we do the same thing. We straddle a chair, we find our position, and we set up entirely comfortably to cultivate the maximum level of attention that we can then give. We basically want to get the body out of the way as a sort of mindful distraction. There's always that ticker tape of extra thought that if you watch a news program on CNN, you have the scroll or the crawl going across. That level of consciousness that is always distracting you from the thing that's currently going on is the thing that we're trying to get rid of. This talk could be called ways of becoming less distracted while listening to music, or ways to how to help your mind from wandering. Now, once you have positioned yourself with the intention of listening to music, what are you going to actually concentrate on? In classical music, we talk a lot about listening down and back. And what we mean by that is we listen down to the lowest pitch and we listen back through the musicians that are playing at that time. If you think about a symphony orchestra, for example, imagine that my palm is a symphony orchestra, okay? And the conductor is like right here. The strings are going to be all around here, and then back here are going to be the winds, and then back here are the brass, and in the very back of the orchestra are the percussion. And the percussion are almost always going to have the smallest subdivision of the beat. The smallest subdivision of the pulse is what the rhythm fundamentally consists of and what everyone else has to respond to. What we call in classical music listening back is basically the same thing as in rock music, just playing with the drummer. And it's trying to find that smallest subdivision of the pulse. So if you're listening to like a regular pulse in music, really actively try to find where is the smallest subdivision. Here's a pulse, for example. You might be hearing a pulse that's twice that, or even 4 times as much, right? Every kind of music has its own distinctive kind of pulse that you can find within it. And if you keep your mind fixated on that pulse, your mind will generally not wander. We also talk a lot in classical music about listening down. We listen down for pitch. We listen back for rhythm, down for pitch. The lowest pitch that's always active at any particular moment in a piece of music is the thing on which all the other music is based. All the other pitches are based. All the harmony is based. And everything has to be always tuned to the lowest possible pitch. If you think about sound as being a visual field, we think of higher pitches as, think visually the highest and lowest being the lowest. Right? The lowest pitch that's happening is the thing that's going to determine everything else. So again, if you're cultivating a form of mindfulness and you want to prevent your mind from wandering while listening to music, identify the sound spectrum itself. Find the lowest pitch that's active at any particular moment. Here's an example of a really low pitch that I might be hearing while playing music, and I'm going to have to tune my violin to it. And if I don't play in tune with that particular low sound, if I pick my own pitch, I'm going to sound janky and out of tune. All harmony is based on listening down. So you have two matrices: time, rhythm, pitch, which determines the verticality of every single moment. We also have the breath, which we integrate into the flow of music. I'm going to play just a little bit for you guys. I'm going to play my violin for a minute and see if you can listen with me and stay present with me in the sound that I'm tuning to. I'm going to be playing a piece of music, a sarabande by Bach, and there's almost always going to be two pitches audible at least, and I'm always going to be tuning the top pitch down to the pitch just below it. And see if you can follow this with me. This is a sarabande by Bach, B minor. I hope you can follow that and you can listen with me as I'm playing. If you always stay with the performer in the sense of cultivating a sense of consciousness that's the same basic sort of thing that the performer is thinking about, you will generally stay mindfully connected to the music. Here's another example. The breath. In practicing mindfulness in seated meditation, often we follow the breath in and out. You can do the same thing in music. Sometimes when I'm playing my music, if I find my mind is wandering a little bit, I will just connect my breath directly to the music. Here's an example. In music, we have phrases and we have microphrases. Microphrases happen on the natural ebb and flow of the music. Sometimes it's just between harmony changes. Here's a really famous piece by Bach for the piano in which you can practice mindful breathing. If you think about just breathing out on one harmony and breathing in on another harmony. Breathe in and out. In, out. One last thought that I want to leave you with is about emotional non-judgment. As you listen to music, most people listen to music for the intention of being emotionally filled up. Whatever it is that happens in your listening experience is what it is. I was given this advice when I was really young, and I've only really been able to appreciate it recently. Whatever's happening when you listen to music inside of yourself, just value it, but also let it go. Acknowledge it in the same way you do in your mindfulness practice if you're doing a seated meditation. It's important and honest that it happened, and whatever it is, you can let go of it and continue on. And in that process, you will find you'll bring things up that you maybe never knew that you had. I'm going to sign off here. Thank you so much for listening to me. And if you have any comments, please throw them in the chat. And if you ever get a chance to come to a concert, come say hey.
Wes, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Really appreciate you sharing your talents and your expertise and your wisdom with us. I pulled up the link for the symphony tomorrow, and that might be my Saturday night activity. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you everyone for joining us this morning. Reminder that we do have one last session this afternoon at 12 o'clock, where we will have a COVID panel with experts from our community talking and discussing COVID from multiple different perspectives. So we hope that you can join us for that this afternoon. But again, thank you very much. Thank you, Wes. It was lovely to see you. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their Friday and a great weekend.